do it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those of you on the West Coast, thank you for joining us early in the morning or early-ish. I'm Courtney Fern, the Nonhuman Rights Project's Director of Government Relations, and I'm zooming in from West Hollywood, California. And we are joined by artist and I'll say activist, Colleen Plumb. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll read a brief sort of bio, and we'll start. Colleen Plumb is an artist who makes photographs, videos, and public video projections investigating contradictory relationships people have with non-human animals. Colleen's work is held in several permanent collections and has been widely exhibited. Her recent photography book, 30 Times a Minute, examines the plight of captive elephants and features a contributing essay by NhRP President Stephen Wise. Colleen lives in Chicago and has taught photography and video at Columbia College Chicago since 1999. So welcome, Colleen. I don't know if you want to add to anything, or we can just dive right in.
Let's dive in. Thank you for the intro.
Okay, so I have a copy of your book here. It's beautiful, and later on we'll tell people how to get it. But if you could talk a little bit about your work generally.
Oh, sure. The beginning of my photography career was I so innocently stepped into thinking about animal protection movement. In my first book, which is called Animals Are Outside Today, I started just photographing all the ways that, and the way I talked about it at the time was really kind of reveals, I guess, what most people, how we view the relationship we have with non-human animals, which is that I would talk about it like how they are intertwined in our lives, as if we're not all just equal on the same planet. And so not to criticize it, I just learned a lot through doing it. So I looked at, artificial presence of nature, representations of animals, captive animals, how they're consumed. And that's where I learned that the way that, I found myself in a meat packer storage lock. I just couldn't believe what I was discovering. So that was the first book, and that was the gateway with my photography into looking and taking this large survey of, that we put them on our clothing, images of animals on our clothing, and that some people eat them, and that we love them too. And this weird contradictory relationship that is so human centric. And then at the very end of doing that project is where my elephant work began. I went to the United Center here in Chicago during a circus, and I filmed I filmed the pre-show, photographed the pre-show, and they were doing the sort of these tricks and displays. And then I left, and I was in the parking lot, and it was November, it was freezing cold, and all the elephants came out and were walking through the parking lot, and no one was around except for like the parking attendant, and it was so cold. And that was where the seed was planted, where I was like, this is so messed up. It is so cold out, and they're just walking through this concrete parking lot. So that's where the Elephant Project started, in doing video of the captive elephants.
So I guess you sort of talk about what drew you to captive elephants. If you want to, could you talk a little bit about 30 Times a Minute and what it represents, and sort of how it came to be, because there are so many different components to it. I know Mickey has a couple or some photos that are representative of those that are in the book, and it's also a video that's on your website, but you documented for hours sometimes captive elephants, I know, at zoos and circuses, and then curated those videos and photos and did, and sorry, I'm not an art person, so I'm probably using all
no, this is all, yeah.
But you created these, they're beautiful and heartbreaking, projections, both, the the photographs that you projected on various like buildings and locations, both iconic and just sort of in the middle of nowhere, like the one you did in Joshua Tree is amazing. But also just to raise awareness. So if you could talk just a little bit about the book, and maybe Nikki, if you could start showing some of the photos.
For sure.
Sure. So after that United Center experience, I set off to do an exploration. I started, going on these road trips where I would visit I went to all these zoos, and I discovered what they do in captivity. I couldn't believe it when I first discovered it. I was in Greenville, South Carolina, and I saw Joy. She was there, and she was just rocking ceaselessly rocking. And that set this 5-year journey into investigating and researching and reading about and documenting all of the elephants that I could, to show what they do, or pace. Like this is Chendra in Portland. And so I made this video. I mean, this was a 5-year where a lot of the times I was driving to wherever zoo and thinking I'm crazy. Like, why am I gathering all of this footage? But it was sort of this relentless search. And this is in Seattle, and they're gone now. And I got deeper and deeper into knowing all of the elephants, and I was by myself. I would just go and drive to these cities, like to almost a hunger to see them and to document what their situation is. That when I found, this is Gina in Memphis, and when I saw them just like bobbing their head and rocking, and I would be there for a day, or I'd come back maybe the next day, and I would see them just forever rocking. And it was hard. I would get really mad, and like, how can this be happening? Just the disbelief that everyone was almost in a different place, different planet. Like everyone's there having family days, and I'm just like, do you see what I'm seeing? So that was my almost obsession, to document what I was seeing. And then let's see, this one's she's in Baraboo. That's Kelly. I went to some circuses too, like sort of smaller circuses, and they were doing the same thing. The title of 30 Times a Minute, my book, comes from, I did this research and I found out that circus owners, when people would ask, like, why are they rocking like that? Because they all do it. And the circus, they're all like these con artists that convince people it's okay. And that was the thing that drove me crazy, is that we can actually see what's happening, and we can see their suffering, and we can see that they are, it's not normal behavior. And the circus owners would tell people, oh, they just do that to keep with their heart rate. And they doze during, it like helps them to just doze. And it's a total fabrication, a lie. I mean, it was an anecdotal thing that I found, but so I found, the resting heart rate of an elephant is 30 beats per minute. So that's where the title comes from, which I like, that it's tied to kind of that trickery that goes on. And so I don't know if I'm going on way too long, but once I gathered all of the footage, after this period of time, this is, in Syracuse, that's Siri. She's been in that enclosure, and I'll talk about the projections in a second, but that enclosure she's my age. She's been living in that place for her whole life. Like when I was in kindergarten, she lived there. When I was, in high school, when I had my children that I got to keep, these elephants, they have babies and they don't get to keep their babies most of the time, or they die, or they kill them, because they're so smart. And know what they're, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's why, but so Siri, you can see that I get upset, because it's like, what to do now? I have all this footage. So I had a show in Miami. The very first show was that after 5 years of gathering, and I edited together a 12-minute, I sewed together all the video that I had, or the most glaring ones, just to try to create a really compelling video showing what I discovered. And I did one show in Miami, and I saw the effect that people had. So that's where the projections started, or the video started, Courtney, to answer that question. And then should I talk about how I started doing the projections outside?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like the evolution of this project. I should have clarified. Yeah, what we're showing right now is after you. Again, I don't mean to tell you about your work. After
please.
all it was collected, you started doing all these projections in both very natural, remote places and very public places like the Brooklyn Bridge, or there was a museum in LA that was in one of the previous videos in Palms. I guess it's not a real museum, but
well, that place is really cool. The museum
yeah,
of dressing.
yeah.
I was like, I gotta sit here.
It's a cool place to project. Yeah, if you want to talk about how you started doing these projections, and I think also you talked about the response that people had during your first showing of this, but what the response has been in public when you've projected in public, and people have seen this.
Well, that was yeah. I love how you talk about it. So it's great. I mean, this is one of the first ones that I did outside. This is she's in Topeka, Kansas. Each title shows where the elephant lives, where they live, like not the zoo, but where they live as an individual, and then where I project it. So after that first show in Miami, and I saw that, I had no idea. I was a still photographer, and I'm making this video, and I had no idea how people would respond. And I could tell that people were really moved by it. They were like, it's almost like this barometer for how people react. Like some people really, it's upsetting. Some people are like, oh, not like, whoa, that's cool. But that this range of understanding happens. And so I got a grant here in Chicago to do the first outdoor. I proposed to do it outside. I thought, oh, what if the Miami show went well and people seemed to be responding in all of these interesting ways, and it generated conversation. That's what I wanted, is that people were like, what is this? And I could have a chance to tell them what I discovered at all of these zoos. And so the grant happened in Chicago, and I saw what happened when I did it outside. So I projected outside on this armory that's like a community center, and it's not an art venue. So it's a public area where parents were going in to take their kids to gymnastics class or cooking classes. It was just a very public place. And I saw how people responded to it. People get it right away. They see this rocking or the pacing, and they are like, huh. And there's something I think that people can just identify in a way, like we see what they're doing, so it has multiple layers where, how are we all as people numb in our lives? And like when you see this in an unexpected place in a city, because after that first time, after I saw the reaction and people were understanding it, that's where I began to get addicted to doing the public projections, because I could see how people reacted, and it generated this conversation. And this is in Toronto, and this is Sophie. She's in Coal Valley. Well, now she's in Little Rock, but I projected in this alley in Toronto, and a lot of the pictures don't have people in them, but it almost doesn't really reveal what actually happens. People talk with me and ask me, what are you doing? Who put you here? Why are you here? There's so much intrigue in that. I'm just setting up my projector and my generator and going all over the place to share this video. And oopsie, my mom is calling me. So I started doing all of the projections. Like I did those for then about 4 years. And in the beginning, I wasn't really photographing them, but then I started photographing them as a whole separate way to talk about the work, like another layer. So we have the original video, and then we have the happening that happens out on the street and allows me to engage with people who are passing by, and is kind of the core of the work, where I get to one person at a time, talk with them, and not preach about what I think, but mostly ask them, you know, what do you think? And I don't get how zoos keep surviving, because everybody I talk to, they're like, I hate zoos, you know. So how do they keep going is my question. You know, like, that's where the Nonhuman Rights Project and all of the work that's being done comes in, because to change policy and to change how things are done, so that this thing that we know is cruel and is inhumane, is an old idea, is, you know, this colonial take from another place and bring back, and as if we can have the right to do that, so that can die out. It's not going to just happen automatically, because people just keep doing it almost out of nostalgia. So the book was a chance to show to use it as a platform, to gather all of the pictures, you know, almost as a testimony of how many places all of these elephants have traveled. Like, I turn on the projector. This is in Rochester at the Eastman Museum. And this is, she's in Topeka too. I'm blanking on her name. I usually remember all their names so much, but I turn on the projector and they're all here. All of these elephants are here. And when I do them out in the landscape, I almost feel like their energy is there. Like, I know that sounds maybe really far out, but it's almost like they're free for a minute, or that when people bear witness to what their situation is, can that energy have some effect that we can't measure? Because, you know, like at the waterfall, they looked like they were splashing in the waterfall, and it made me cry, actually. I was like, I mean, it could be a really scary place, dark, and I turn on the projector, and then I'm like, hi, everybody. It's really, that's why I think I haven't been doing them since the book came out, and I miss it. I miss them. I wonder how they're all doing. You know, I don't want to lose touch with them in a way. And this is Tom Tai. She's in Amsterdam, and this is at at Harvard, at the Art Museum at Harvard. And this was a really interesting night where I had lots of students came by, and there was so much good discussion. So I don't know if I've jumped all over the place, but I know what I was going to say is that the book gathers everything, right? It gathers what happened, and it gathers the collaboration, that there are so many people working on this. And I guess, Courtney, we should, you know, when I first learned of Steve's work, that was actually a big part of this book happening, because I'm like, he's dedicated his life. Stephen Wise has dedicated his life, and watching Unlocking the Cage was so inspiring to me. I'm like, well, this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. There's so much work to do to change the status quo that people want to keep the same. So he's really inspiring to me. And all of the work, like Catherine Doyle, she wrote an essay in the book, and from the Paw Sanctuary, you know, I got to meet everybody in the animal protection movement. Oh, there's the puppy. And
yeah, I'm throwing treats.
yeah, I mean, in the book, there's 9 contributors to the book. So to have all of a chance to project all of those voices in the book feels like really important to me. So
yeah,
this one is by you in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's in Beverly Hills. It's the street I drive down. I walk Silencio there when he's good. Oh, now he's next to me. Sorry. Yeah. And your book, the essays in there, the people that wrote, it's such a diverse group of people who are advocating on behalf of the elephants, from Dr. Joyce Poole, who's one of the foremost scientific experts on elephant cognition and behavior, to Catherine Doyle at Paws, who we spoke to a couple weeks ago, to Stephen Wise. There are a couple others in there. It's just such an inspiring book, just seeing that. And I loved what you said about how when you do your projections, it's almost like the elephants have an opportunity to be free for just that one moment, and just that to show these. And I think that I'm always moved, or most moved, by your projections that are, you know, not against buildings, but in nature, because it just shows the, you know, the contrast between these, you know, the cages essentially that they're living in, and then, you know, where they should be living freely, and just how amazing, you know, they are, and they shouldn't be held captive. And it's just inspiring. And then I should let people know, you actually did a projection at one of our events that we held our first rally for the Comerford Elephants, I think 2 years ago, in February, maybe was it February 2018? I forget. It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was at least 2 years ago.
It was prior to Beulah and Karen's deaths. And it was at the DCU Center in Worcester. I'm probably mispronouncing that, Massachusetts.
No, I think that's right. I heard that tell you.
My West Coast, my West Coast accent and pronunciation. But the response people had to that, it was just so heartbreaking. You know, people leaving, you know, that weren't there that day, but there were camels, you know, non-human primates, you know, ponies, goats, kangaroos, lots of animals that are exploited by the Comerford Zoo that were held captive there, and people leaving there and seeing your projection. You know, people stopped, you know, and cried, and it was incredibly moving, just to see the response. But
that was the first like protest. Like, this is me. I'm so you know, I went out and did made this video, and then have been out projecting. And then when I went to my first conference, it was the FOES, the Free the Oregon Zoo Elephants conference. It's almost like the activist, you all, like, who are activists, who are doing policy and actual, like, really hard work, invited me. And I'm like, this was a homecoming. It was like, I mean, I had met Steve, and I researched everybody and read a lot, of course, all of these years, but to be at a conference and to see how we can work together, you know, that my projections are one way, you know, it's a gesture to amplify the work being done, and that we all can kind of work together to make a difference. And so I've met, you know, that's how a lot of the people I've met that contributed essays, like Hope Ferdosian from the Phoenix Zones Initiative, and what they're working on is incredible. You know, thinking about when there's a lack of rights for humans or animals, or for animals, there's usually a lack of rights for people as well. And just the work that is being done is incredible. So I don't know, I just feel like it's such a blessing that I'm grateful to the animals that I have met, and that have brought me to you know, your work. Really it's been, and this is my show actually here, right before the pandemic, right just missed, you know, not being seen. It was such a special night, and Mickey was here and she spoke, and it was so great to bring this work to you know, the art world audience. And also because, you know, sometimes I think, like, who am I? Am I an activist? Oh, I started talking about that was my first rally. Like, I'm not, I feel like I can't call myself an activist, like, because I'm not out doing, you know, marching. And it was really inspiring to see that happens, and to see what I can do, you know, that I am just, I don't have to label it, or we all have to do our part. But that rally was really cool to see, and to see everybody's response to it is really humbling, because you know, I saw what was going on with the elephants, and I see the effect of captivity, and it drives me crazy that this is going on, and it's still going on. Like, right now, who's pacing right now? You know, so many right this second, you know, like, to think of them.
And something that you sort of inspire, I'm sort of like you. I don't enjoy going and seeing animals in captivity, but I feel by doing so and by documenting it and by, being able to see what I can do both in my work professionally with NhRP and then personally on the side to help advocate for their freedom, or very least, he's like coming up here, in their situation. I've taken to, you're the one that told me about this. I watch elephant cams all the time. I don't know if you're aware of this. A lot of zoos have 24/7 or pretty frequent elephant cams, so you can watch the elephants, from your home. And I've been watching the Houston Zoo elephants for the past couple months, and every single day, there's at least 2 that are head bobbing and swaying. And as I watch it, it also shows the people that are there, guests of the zoo, watching the elephants, and just seeing like no one's reacting to it. And it's sort of heartbreaking. But it's also, watching it, it's, bearing witness to their suffering, sort of, you're seeing them, you're giving them, you're going to be able to tell their story by documenting it or witnessing it or doing whatever you can with it. And it's just so important. And I've been inspired by you to do that. I think a lot of, it also enables people, and I just want to tell people, it's obviously Elephant Appreciation Day, but, if you look at these zoos, elephant cams, and I'm happy to tell people who's interested what zoos have elephant cams, and then you can write the zoo. You can say, I watched your elephant cam today. One of your elephants was head bobbing for 45 minutes or swaying. What can you do something about that? Let them know that you're watching. It does something, and it can be an advocate. Tweet about it, post it on Instagram. There's so many things that you can do. When you talked about your work, I'm amazed that you remember each and every one of the elephants that you've documented. Is there a particular elephant who stands out to you, or who touched you in a way, or just their circumstances really, something that was notable? I'm sure they all were heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I didn't know if if there's one in particular that stands out to you that really.
Well, I think that one that comes to mind is, in Albuquerque, I noticed that, I don't know if it was true, but I think it was. So she was swaying, and there's a large group at that zoo, and they would go in and interrupt her. And I watched it over and over and over. Like, she was, it's a movement disorder. Like, in this book by Georgia Mason, called Stereotypic Behavior, they can do things like, if people see an elephant, they will do what the zoos call enrichment, to distract them. We can be distracted. Like, if we're agitated, you can do something, eat something, distract yourself. But it never, an elephant is normally walking 30 miles a day. What they should be doing, what the far roaming animals should be doing, the zoos cannot replicate. For polar bears, elephants, tigers, the dolphins, these animals that go are traveling far distances, how could we ever think that we could replicate that? So when I saw it in Albuquerque, they can't stop them permanently. Like, they can't cure stereotypic behavior. It's almost like once they start doing it, it's their brain, it becomes a brain injury. And I've read this, scientists, biologists have talked about this, that once you're doing it, it's very hard to stop it. So the other elephants would interfere. Isn't that incredible? Like, they would go and they would nudge her to get her to stop, but she would move over 5 feet and then she'd start up again. It's almost like somebody who's addicted and you try to stop them and you can't, and how heartbreaking it is for the rest of the herd. So you're seeing, this is joy. This is the beginning. It's because of the internet, you know, it's stuttering. It in the real video, or if you watch the video on my website, it would be smooth, or the projected image would be smooth. But I think that what I was going to say is, you know, there's a lot that we can do through action. You know, we can say to children, or we can say to teachers, you know, hey, don't take my kid to the zoo on a field trip. We can slowly change what is being done. You can write to zoos and say, stop your breeding programs, because this is not working. Like, we know, like, you look at the Detroit Zoo, I have such admiration for, they were the first zoo to send their elephants to sanctuary based on ethical reasons. These are zookeepers who said, this is not cool, this is not doable. We're in Detroit. I mean, you can see with your eyes, this is in Syracuse, this is Doc. They gave them up, and what happens? They lose their accreditation, they get in all this trouble. I mean, the zoo industry is so monstrous and controlling. So we can say to them, we don't want to see these elephants anymore. We don't want you to continue your breeding program. We don't want to see babies anymore. And we're going to pay our ticket money anyway. You know, tell them, like, eliminate your breeding programs, put your elephants, the ones that can be put into sanctuary. We need, you know, how many elephants can fit in a sanctuary? Like, looking at actually at a lot of the ideas that Joyce Poole has at Elephant Voices about what we can do, because none of these elephants are going to be like put back in the wild. But if I tell my children, our ticket money, guess what it's going to? It's going toward protecting habitat, wild habitat, or actual conservation. If we teach kids that our money can actually help with, you know, human-animal conflict in different areas where it's in native habitat, that's where we can put our money. And kids who are the smartest at the zoos, I hear them all the time. I have so many recordings of kids saying, why is it doing that? And the parents justifying it. We're teaching children to not believe what they're seeing, or not to almost to like rationalize away what we're seeing. So what is that educating? That's educating that seeing injustice is to be rationalized. So if we tell kids, guess what? There's no babies here, and we are helping to, I mean, I don't know, we're helping to support what really needs support. And if kids can get behind that. I mean, when I was in, what zoo was I at? And it was at the polar bear. I think this was actually in Detroit too. The polar bear exhibit was this massive, you know, land beyond the tank. And the polar bear was nowhere to be seen and at all, but they had a sort of a heat camera, and they had dress up things. And the kids were putting on like these explorer outfits, and they could see on this camera that would detect your heat, you know, like real science, things that actually are interesting to kids, and playful things, like, and that there's so many solutions. I feel like zoos should hire me as a consultant, because I could tell them, like, build more sprinklers, jumping things where kids can go play, because parents, we want to bring our kids outside and to have them do things. So can it be turned, like what Joyce Poole is talking about, to parks, and we stop breeding, and we tell kids the truth of why is that polar bear pacing forever? What is that? They're not happy. Like, you can't say, you know, they're happy. I've heard this, you know, like, well, they're perfectly happy. So we could tell the kids, you know why they're doing that? Because normally they would be walking 200 miles. And then the kid learns this. And we can say, you know what, we're having trouble with ice, the melting ice on our planet. So let's figure out ways to stop that from happening. And like, this actually educate. I don't know, I get so mad. Like, they could really educate instead of appease. And some zoos are doing, I mean, not to dismiss like the science that can happen, and that I don't know the solution necessarily, but to really support what is conservation, and not for us. It is not for us anymore. Like, put that to rest. No more it's entertainment, you know? So anyway, there's my I try not to do that. When I'm doing a projection, I don't really talk this way. I try.
No, I mean, you're so right, and you're so eloquent, and your perspective is spot on, and I totally agree. I mean, zoos, there's no justification for keeping elephants in captivity, especially for breeding them, because they're not sending them back to the wild. There's never been an elephant from a zoo, an AZA accredited zoo in the United States that's been sent back to the wild. There's never been like a newborn and their mother sent back to repopulate a wild population. No, the elephants born in zoos are going to stay in zoos unless they're sent to a sanctuary. Like they're going to be in captivity the rest of their life. They're not helping repopulate the wild population. So the only justification is for entertainment and money and whatever other reason the zoo has. It's not for conservation. They can learn so much more from what's being done, the research done by scientists in Asia and Africa studying wild populations. There's absolutely no justification. And I think, you need to, parents in zoos are so much, parents, if they choose to take their child to a zoo and they see something wrong, they need to tell the child, I'm not a parent, so I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but, educating about what's wrong with this. And that polar bear or tiger, is pacing because they should be, they shouldn't be in the middle of, San Diego, in 100-degree heat. It doesn't make sense. So I think that's totally right. And that's what we're fighting for, to have the rights, at least of the species that we're currently representing, recognized, so they no longer can be held captive in ways that prevent them from enjoying their autonomy and living freely. And the ones that are currently held captive here in the United States, unfortunately, they can't be sent back to the wild. So they can, the best we can do is send them to sanctuaries, and there are great sanctuaries here in the United States. And there's also an amazing one in South America, in Brazil. And and just ensuring that the wild populations can stay wild, and hopefully be better protected and flourish. And it's just there's so much that can be done.
I think about happy too. I mean, we haven't mentioned happy.
I was going to talk about happy because when you were saying, I forget what you said, but it triggered. I was thinking about happy, about like why zoos won't send elephants to sanctuary or close their exhibits. And Happy at the Bronx Zoo, and Patty, Patty's also there. She's not our client, but we certainly are concerned about her and are very aware of her situation, because he's now on my lap. He's held alone. But the Bronx Zoo has already said they're no longer going to have elephants after Happy and Patty. They're their last elephants. So why wouldn't, and Happy and Patty are both in their late 40s. Happy's 49, I think Patty's 50. Why not send them to a sanctuary now? Why hold them captive until they die? You're no longer going to have elephants after them. So what's the point? Like why not, and let them enjoy the freedom for the the time that they have left, and they can easily live another 10, 15 years. There's no reason for them to hold them captive. And Happy, her situation is as if it couldn't get worse. It has gotten worse. We found out that the Bronx Zoo has made her small 1-acre outdoor yard even smaller. They've split it off into 2 parcels so that Happy and Patty can be outside at the same time. And it appears that they've made it so 3/4 of the space is for one elephant and 1/4 is for the other. So, depending on whether Happy or Patty's in the larger space, Happy could just have 1/4 of an acre. Or 3/4 of an acre, which
just to think that where they could be.
It's,
you see how they recover. They go to sanctuary and they recover, and that could happen. I feel like if people understood what was going on, it's almost like we're blind. That's hopefully all the work can, how can we show people this is the reality of their little, you take that little tram. And I saw them in the Bronx, and you get to see them for 10 seconds as you go on that tram past, and you can't believe it. I mean, this is, sorry.
This has been her life for 45 years. She's been there since 1971. Well, I can't do math. She's been there for longer than that. but she, you know, over 40 years, she's just been in that tiny exhibit, you know, at some points with way more elephants just crammed in there.
Yeah.
Used to be ridden. It's insane to think about, and that they just won't let her and Patty go to a sanctuary. It's just unfathomable.
This was what I did the summer before, or well, for ongoing, but in the center of the book, here, I have the book, is all the, there's the pictures, and in the middle, so I just want to shout out to Radius too, that where people can get it, we'll tell them, but that David Chickey, who designed, and Montana Curry, who designed this book, like helping figure out how to put all of this together in a book. And they just were so brilliant, and I just love it. But in the center, I wanted to include their biographies. Each elephant has a story, and you can look in the center, it's sandwiched halfway, are all the biographies of each elephant that I've met and filmed. And you can see where it's so so totally heartbreaking to see the situation that they, like, here's Sophie. You can see she was wild caught in Asia in 1969. She went to this Billy Smart Circus, Ringling Circus World, Ringling, Nayabi Zoo, and then Little Rock Zoo. Now, this is where she keeps going. I mean, they get shuffled around, and then you go to Happy. I just feel like it was so hard to find out the truth of what their life is, and that every single one of them. Here, you look at Happy. Here's Happy, wild caught in Asia in 71, captured in 72. She went to this Laguna Hills safari. Just like the early years, she got transferred a few times. Like she was born in 71, and by 73, she was at the safari. Then she went to the Bronx Zoo in 1977 until now. And then Happy has been, so when this book was published the beginning of this year, she's been in solitary since 2006.
Yeah,
these are social beings.
She's been held alone for 14 years. And they say that she'd like to correct us and say that she's not alone, but she's not interacting with other elephants. Yeah, she might be able to smell Patty. Now she can see her, but they're incredibly social animals. And Happy's had companions, but up until her latest one, or most recent one, Sammy, passed away in 2006. So there's no justification for keeping her alone, and now Patty's alone. So they both need to be sent to a sanctuary, and there's no reason for them not to be sent. And similar to Minnie, our other client who's at the Comerford Zoo, she's alone now because the two elephants held captive with her, Beulah and Karen, passed away last year. And now we found out the Comerford Zoo they are doing a fundraiser or endorsed one, trying to raise $2.4 million to cover the cost for care because they can no longer afford her food or veterinary care. They explicitly said this. And now they've opened up their farm to the public. And at a recent town meeting, they said they want to do elephant rides. Minnie's almost 50. And it's so sad because she was brought to the United States. She was captured in the wild in Thailand, brought to the United States at 2 months old, and owned by a family who used her, they rented her out for entertainment purposes, and then sold her to the Comerford Zoo. And the Comerford Zoo now, there's no justification for them keeping her. Obviously there never was. But now they can't even afford to feed her, and they won't send her to sanctuary.
It really makes me wonder what is up with humans and this need to hold on to. Like, that's the thing that when all things point to the rational solution, which is releasing her to Sanctuary. Why doesn't that, why can't, it's like this almost insanity of holding on for the sake of it, that we will never surrender. There's something there that is this core idea of why captivity even exists. It's like, this is mine and I'm going to have it and I'm going to make money off of it. And this is showing how cool I am that I can do this. Like when menageries were started, these landowners had all this money and look at how amazing I am. Look at how I can flaunt this exotic thing. And it's something that needs to be sort of rooted out. Why is it that this Comerford dude needs to have, can't some miracle occur that will say this, what is the reasonable, what is the humane, what is the kind thing to do? And hopefully with enough pressure, I guess that's what all my work is trying to do, is like, let's rethink this. Let's say to him, we appreciate what you've done. You've done your entertainment. You think that's a good, but now we know, and now there can be something better. And, I've talked to these circus guys who own these elephants, and they really believe that they're doing they believe it. It's bizarre. And to talk with them is like, okay, you think it's your kid and you think you're treating it well, but you're not educated. You don't understand what the elephant actually needs.
I think you touched on it. It's a thinghood, and it's what Steve talks about when we talk about, still viewing, such intelligent, magnificent beings such as elephants as things that you can own. Like you said, she's mine. Give her up. She's like, I'm speaking of many are even happy. Like, she's ours. The Bronx, she's mine. She's a thing. We know what's best when, and I think there's sort of, as humans, we sometimes have an arrogance in thinking that we know what's best, even when who are experts. We're not experts in elephant behavior and cognition. We rely on the experts like Joyce Poole and Cynthia Moss. And, it's just, sort of having some humility and recognizing that you don't know everything, and listening to those that are experts in this and telling you, it's not even criticizing you, but just, to change. Minnie's suffering. Like, you may have an emotional bond with her, and she may have an emotional bond with you because they're incredibly social. And, I wouldn't doubt that she's formed bonds or happy with her caretakers, because they're the only people or anyone that she's been able to interact with. So of course there's going to be some bonds, but if you have the opportunity if she has the opportunity to live with members of her own species, she's going to thrive, and that's going to be preferred. And it's like, at a certain point, you just have to recognize this isn't right. And she would do better somewhere else. It's not a defeat. It's, you're helping, someone that you've cared for and loved for, X amount of years. And it's unfathomable to me as to why nowadays all we know about elephants, like in 2020, why they're still being held captive. And maybe we can touch, since it is Elephant Appreciation Day, we can talk about just quickly what both of us appreciate about elephants and maybe our hope for the future for them. I guess I'll go. I appreciate their resilience, especially given all that we've done to them. Looking at elephants at, sanctuaries, just how they've rebounded. And, it's almost like there's no resentment towards humans, just all we've done to them. The ones that have been held captive in horrible situations, they go to sanctuaries and they just thrive. And it's so amazing to see. I keep saying resiliency, but just their resiliency and in the wild, just, they're keystone species, and they have, play an enormously important role in our ecosystem and the health of our environment and human well-being and health. And, I'm appreciative of all they do for that. And my hope is that through work that we're doing and the work that you're doing, that more people come to realize that elephants don't belong in captivity, that they do have the right to liberty and the right to live freely, and those currently held captives should be sent to a sanctuary and given the opportunity to regain the freedom, well, most of them, the freedom that was stolen from them so long ago, and those that were born in captivity to be able to enjoy it for the first time in their lives.
Yeah. Oh, that is so well said. That really is, I mean, the resilience, that's, I echo that. And I think that for me, I think it's a respecting what we don't know, that they have a whole, their whole self is something that we are attracted to. You know, they're so magnificent. There's such an aura that they have, and that we don't know what they say to each other. They communicate through infrasound. I mean, they are so advanced, such advanced beings, and that to just know, and like you've said, the word humility, like we don't know what is, you know, and just to give way, you know, like give them space and stop needing to see them and stop interfering and say, okay, that's, they are, you know, live and let live, that they need space. And I just think that if we could, if they can survive, you know, if there can be enough land and enough space and habitat where they can survive and thrive. I mean, they can survive and be in sanctuary, which gives them tons of space, and you know, they have to be managed and fed, and but that if both can exist, like that sanctuary can expand. If the idea of sanctuary where we leave them alone, and that can be the new human way. If we just leave them alone to be elephants and say, we have no idea, and just give them this respect. I just feel like from the beginning of my work, it's been about this idea of needing to connect with animals for some reason, like an instinct with us that we want to connect. And like there's domesticated animals, like my dog is my buddy. Like he's like my emotional support, you know, in a way, because if I'm upset, he's like, what's the matter? And, you know, it's really, that's okay, you know. And I mean, I don't want to bring that up because that's a whole other thing, like to really totally respect what we don't know. So with elephants, it's to me, it's that.
Yeah, that's great. I know we're sort of short on time, but Mickey, I don't know if there were any questions or we can tell.
Yeah, I'll open it up to questions if anyone who has a question wants to type it into the chat box.
And I guess until then, Colleen, do you want to tell people how they can find your book or watch your not film? I don't know, the reel.
Oh, the film. It's you can order the book. Radiusbooks.org is the site where you can find the book. You can also find a link on my website, which is ColleenPlumb.com. And that my website has a link to ordering the book, ColleenPlumb.com, and radiusbooks.org. And you can watch the video in the video section on my website also. And there's also in the 30 times a minute section, you can see some installation, you know, in documentation of the projections also. So I hope people will get this, because you know what? Stephen Wise has a brilliant essay. It is so good. I mean, I'm just in awe of all of the essays, that all the different voices. I can't say enough. Linda Hogan writes this amazing piece. Les O'Brien, he was a former zookeeper from Canada. Catherine Doyle from the Sanctuary, Mandy Suzanne Long, she has this essay that's about the infrasound. And Hope Ferdosian from Phoenix Zones Initiative, and then Julia Cook, she's a brilliant writer who writes about the installations. And did I leave anybody out? We've got Joyce, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, and Mark Beckoff, yeah.
Colleen, so I have a question from Christine. She asks, Does your work involve any captive elephants outside of the US?
Well, I did go to Europe, to Berlin, to Paris, to Vienna, because Vienna was the first zoo, and I filmed at those zoos, and Amsterdam. So I filmed in really early, the earliest European zoos. And I wanted, as sort of an acknowledgement of where this all started, where zoos kind of began. So we went to the Schönbrunn, it's this big palace, and then there's a zoo there that is kind of the oldest zoo, and Paris has a really, really old zoo. So kind of the origin, and that felt important. And then I came back and I thought, well, where's the earliest zoo here in Illinois, or in the United States? And Philadelphia. So I had to do projections and honor the earliest. There's the Central Park Zoo, but also the Philadelphia Zoo are the earliest two.
Oh. Okay, and I guess this is maybe more a question for Courtney, but an important one. Do you know if sanctuaries in Thailand or maybe elsewhere are, doing good, or are they just glorified zoos as well? And you too, Colleen, having seen so many zoos around the world.
I think it would have to be the particular sanctuary. Just like in the United States, there are sanctuaries that call themselves sanctuaries and they aren't actually sanctuaries. They're just, an exploitative venue holding animals captive and not, providing them with their freedom. And then there are some that are legitimate sanctuaries. So I think I would have to be asked, if you can ride an elephant, not a sanctuary. It's pretty easy way to tell. But there are legitimate sanctuaries in Thailand. But I would just have to know which ones. But just like anywhere, there are some that aren't real sanctuaries, and, even though they call themselves that, and some that aren't.
Yeah, that's the researching is the main thing, because people ask me a lot, and it's really a research question, that ecotourism, and they can say whatever they want, but really doing what Courtney just said is researching. If they, if you're able to have a lot of contact with them, I have to question how good a sanctuary is. But there are good lists. There's you can find, I don't remember where I actually found this one list that was, places that you can visit and support that are actual sanctuaries. And Catherine talks about that in the book. What is a true sanctuary? Yeah.
I see a question and I do want to answer it. It's, zoos in other nations ever release elephants or other large animals? Because there's an exciting, I guess it's related to elephants. The Islamabad High Court in Pakistan has ordered Kavan, a solitary bull elephant, to be sent to sanctuary. They declared that he has legal rights and is entitled to his freedom, and he is currently in the final stages of being moved to a sanctuary in Cambodia. And there have also been in South America, there was, Sandra, an orangutan, was released from the zoo and sent to the Great Ape Center in in Florida. And Cecilia, chimpanzee, I think in Argentina, I can't talk today, was released from a zoo and sent to a sanctuary. And then the Global Sanctuary for Elephants in Brazil they've just been on a roll in terms of getting zoos to release solitary female elephants and sending them to their sanctuary. I think right now it's an elephant named Bambi. I forget what country she's based in, but she's currently in the process. I think they're getting her acclimated to her crate. I follow them on social media. They're amazing. And it's amazing what they've been able to do so quickly in South America. But there have been quite a few zoos that have released their elephants or animals to sanctuary. And as Colleen talks about, the Detroit Zoo made the decision to close its elephant exhibit because they acknowledged that they cannot meet the needs of elephants in captivity and sent their elephants to pause. The Toronto Zoo closed their elephant exhibit and sent their elephants to pause. The Anchorage Zoo in Alaska closed its elephant exhibit and sent their elephant to pause. And, you know, we're hopeful. The Bronx Zoo, you know, they have said they're going to close their elephant exhibit upon the death of one of their elephants, which happened when Maxine died. But, you know, we're hopeful that they'll, you know, recognize that they need to send her Happy and Patty to Sanctuary. If not, we're moving. Our appellate hearing is going to happen soon, so we're going to try to make that happen if they haven't. But the Bronx Zoo is, you know, there are lots of zoos have said they're going to close their elephant exhibits upon, you know, the death of their remaining elephants. SeaWorld in California, their orcas, and this is just because of a law that was passed, but the orcas currently at SeaWorld San Diego are going to be the last orcas held captive there. The state has banned the keeping of orcas in captivity. And I believe, I forget what what SeaWorld said, but it was like transition. I think they're no longer going to be breeding. It might just be the San Diego one, but then the law was passed. But yeah, and aquariums too. That brings up aquariums. The National Aquarium in Baltimore is creating a seaside sanctuary for their dolphins. There's institutions are recognizing that it's wrong to keep many animals in captivity and are sending them to sanctuaries or making commitments to send them to sanctuaries in the future.
That is so good. Hearing all the good news. I mean, that's very helpful and hopeful, right? That things are changing. You know, I have to believe like things are changing, and what amazing work you're doing. That's the thing. It's like how effective it is to change the courts. I mean, I don't know. I really feel like such admiration and awe, really, because that's like, look at SeaWorld. That is because of a law that was passed or an ordinance or whatever. And that's how I feel like I owe so much to Stephen Wise have you all seen Unlocking the Cage? Like, that's incredible his career and has had this arc where now it's getting to be normal talk. This is becoming popular, where people know how laws should work and protect animal, like animal thinghood will be a thing of the past, you know, through the work of Steve. Like in the beginning, what does it say? Like he was made fun of as a lawyer. And now my daughter just graduated from high school, and her friend wants to be an animal rights lawyer. And I mean, this didn't exist, you know. This is all because of the work that's being done. You look at Ed Stewart at the Paw Sanctuary, when he began that sanctuary with help me, what was his late wife, Pat Derby? When they started the Paw Sanctuary in California, they would have a conference and like 4 people would come and it would be just people talking, like with pull-out chairs. And now you go to a Paw Sanctuary convention, or not what did I just call it?
Their Captive Wildlife Conference.
Sorry. Yeah. And it's hundreds of people there working in all the different industries, and to witness, I mean, for Ed, he talked about this at the last conference, and could actually witness in his lifetime this growth. So I don't know, it just gives me a lot of hope, and I feel like I'm coming in so like I'm doing a project now on this one polar bear, and thinking about slaughterhouses, and like I'm only at the beginning. I feel so inspired by people who dedicated their career, their whole career, to making a difference, and that we can all do every little bit. Mark Bekoff talks about this too. Every little thing that we do, recycling the one thing, or telling one teacher, let's go to a nature center instead of the zoo, and tell the zoo why. Let's not be a member. These little things all make a difference. They add up. So it gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, me too. So I know we've gone over our time.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry, Courtney. I was just going to say, for anyone who wants it, we will send around that list of legitimate sanctuaries or maybe we'll do a blog post or something, and
We'll do
also a
it.
list of, yeah. Also the list of elephant cams.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you can just search zoo elephant cam and they'll all come up. That's a pretty easy one. I've never watched an elephant cam. I would say, you know, if you watch for a couple minutes, you'll see an elephant engaging in stereotypic behavior. Even at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, where they love to say it's a natural, they have an elephant cam. So
I think it's so funny. They totally implicate themselves. It's like if you watch for one day, it's like, because people don't stay. I know I'll talk forever, but it's really something to see.
Yeah, it's great. It's crazy. But we'll send around a list as well. Yeah, but thank you so much, Colleen, and we'll send around an email so everyone can see how, if you want to buy her book, it's both incredibly informative and beautiful. It's like the most beautiful book. We'll send around how to do that, and also where you can watch her very moving video, the footage that she documented. And thank you so much for everyone that joined us on Elephant Appreciation Day. And just thank you, Colleen, and yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. It's been so nice to talk, and thanks to everybody who's been here with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.